Okay, so here's where we're going to talk about creating tables. If you're not familiar with creating tables, there are multiple ways to do so. I can create a table right now, and I give this table a heading. Just do something quick. Schools in the Bahamas. And then that's going to be my table heading. And then I'm going to have some columns and some rows. Now, every time I go across, it's a row. Every time I go down, it's a column. So in this particular instance, I'm going to make three columns, and this is all going to be fictitious information. My first column is going to have the header, which lets me know what the column is about, and it's going to be about island. So just island. I want another column, and so I can either press tab. I press tab twice to give it some good space in between. And let's say I put number of primary schools. Now I'm going to press tab again, twice again. For my third column, number of high schools. And so this is going to be an example in my instance of a very unorganized table, but it's a table nonetheless. And so this is going to be my heading. I'm going to make this central. Right now, my column headings, this is my table heading, which covers information about the entire table. This is my column heading, which is just going to tell me what the information below is supposed to represent. So information below each of the columns it's going to represent this information at the top here. So when I press enter, let's say I start off with Exuma. Then I want to say Nassau. Then I want to say Grand Bahama. Then I want to say Eleuthera, if I'm even spelling that right. I have no idea. Okay, I guess I am. Eleuthera. So let's use those for. This is our first column. I have information included in all of the first column. This is our first row. A row goes from left to right. A column goes from top to bottom. So this is a column. This is a row. Each of these are going to be individual rows. So this particular table has 3 columns and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. Now, what happens with tables, you just have to make sure you line everything up properly. If you notice, everything is going to be lined up. This is blocked because everything is lined up to the left of the column. Now, I can try that with this one, but what I'm going to see if I was to look at it and I was to kind of do an imaginary line here, let's see if I insert a line, might make it easier. Insert a line. If I do this, going to see that Bahama is going to cut into it a bit. And so for that reason, I'm going to have to move this second column over so that there's no problem. And this column doesn't fall into that column because that's not how it's supposed to work. Each column is supposed to be distinct and separate. So let's say I'm imagining that there are 12 primary schools in Exuma. I press tab until I get underneath my column. And then let's say I'm going to imagine that there's 3. I'm just going to keep adding that information by clicking tab over. By clicking tab. Until I've entered in sufficient information. Of course, this is not correct, but just for purposes of demonstration. And so this is an example of how a table can look. Now, the only other thing I would say about a table like this, maybe you don't want your numbers to be lined off to the left. Maybe they want you, normally with numbers, they want you to line them off over to the right. And so it can get a little difficult if you are changing these. Let's say if I press tab here, it's going to move this as well. And so you just got to hope that it doesn't do something like this or hope that it goes in the right direction. So you can do a table like this fairly easy when you have numbers, though I normally suggest that you don't. because that makes it a little harder. But if you have words, it's going to be fairly easy. You just type in everything and you make sure it's underlined under the headings properly. If they want it to be centered, and you can easily center words, but numbers tend to be different depending on the place value of numbers. Now, another way you can do it, which is the way that I like to do it, is create a table. And like we said, our table is going to have 3 columns and 5 rows. So it's a 3 by 5 table. And so once I select that, I can just simply enter that information in. Schools. And I'm just moving from one to the next by pressing tab. So that's how quickly we can get this done. Oops. And so that's another way of creating this table. I'll put my table heading back in here. All right, and so this is another way to create a table. This table looks very different from the first table. I'm going to be able to modify how everything looks. If I wanted to just move a whole column over, I can by just hovering over the lines and moving them over, making them shorter. And it will do is it automatically change the alignment of the words if the words are long, which is very convenient because sometimes they may give you column headings that are typed differently. And so it's just, if it's a matter of you just making the column smaller, then that works. Okay, so this is another way, like I said, of creating a table. It's a little bit neater. If I wanted to change the placement of my numbers, all I had to do was actually highlight, and then I could click right align, and it right aligns correctly. I could click center, and it centers correctly based on the size of the width of each column. And so that makes this one of the better ways or the easier ways to do it. If I wanted to just center my columns, I would just highlight and click center. I could hover here, or I could highlight each of the columns, press center. If I wanted to bold it, press bold. If I wanted to underline, wanted to italicize, it's easy to change the format and everything without messing up the entire table. Versus up here, if I do something like this, I might mess up the entire table. Because as you see, number of high schools came all the way over here versus high schools stayed here. And so this is normally the way that I suggest everybody to do it. Only difference would be, depending on how the table looks, maybe a table doesn't have any lines. Well, in that instance, what I'm going to ask you to do is hover over here where you see this and highlight the entire thing. And you're going to come to this simple button right here, borders, click no borders, and it takes your borders off or it makes them clear. You can still act the same way I was with the borders on. I can still center and move everything accordingly. Hover over it. I should be able to find a line somewhere. Let's see. Yep, there's a line. So I can still move it the same way. But I like to tell people, make sure you move everything the way you want it first before you hide the lines, because it gets harder. But I just wanted to point this out. These are 2 ways of creating a table that you can use in your assignments for this week.